The fluorescent lights above the Walmart checkout line buzzed like dying insects. I watched her fumble with that card for the third time, and something in my chest tightened. Rain hammered against the glass doors behind us. It was that kind of Thursday evening where the sky turned gray too early, and everyone just wanted to get home. I'd been on my feet for 11 hours at the diner, and my lower back felt like someone had taken a hammer to it. All I wanted was detergent and milk. Simple things. Cheap things. But the woman in front of me, silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, hands shaking like autumn leaves, she needed something more than groceries right then. "Declined again, ma'am," the cashier said. Her voice carried that flat, tired edge that comes from saying the same thing 100 times a day. The old woman's fingers trembled as she tried the card one more time. "I don't understand. There should be money." Behind me, someone sighed loud enough to make sure we all heard it. A man in a business suit checked his watch like time was bleeding out of his wrist. A teenager with headphones shifted her weight from foot to foot, making her impatience a physical thing. The total on the screen glowed green, $90.37. Bread. Cat food. Medicine bottles with labels I couldn't quite read. Basic things. Survival things. Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. The woman's face had gone pale. Not the kind of pale that comes from being cold. The kind that comes from shame burning through your skin. I knew that look. I'd worn it myself plenty of times, standing at registers, counting change twice, calculating whether I could afford both rent and food that week. "Ma'am, you'll need to step aside if..." "I'll cover it," I heard myself say. The words came out soft. They always did. My foster mother used to tell me I talked like I was apologizing for taking up air. Maybe she was right. I stepped forward and slid my card across the scanner before my brain could catch up with my mouth. The machine beeped. Approved. Just like that, $90.37 disappeared from my account. Money I'd been saving for new work shoes because mine had holes in the soles that let in rainwater. The old woman turned to face me. Her eyes were brown, deep like creek water, and they were filling up fast. "No, sweetheart. You don't have to. It's already done," I said, trying to smile. Trying to make it seem like $90 was nothing when it was actually everything. "Please. You've got to eat." She reached for my hand. Her skin felt paper-thin, soft in that way that comes with age. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you so much." I helped her load the bags into her cart. The business suit behind us huffed and moved to another line. The teenager never even looked up from her phone. The world kept spinning like nothing had happened. Like kindness was just another transaction. But as I walked toward the exit with my own small bag, I felt it, that pressure between my shoulder blades that comes when someone's watching you. I turned my head slightly, pretending to check my phone. Two men stood near the pharmacy section. Tall. Black suits that fit too well for Walmart. One of them had a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The other wore sunglasses even though we were indoors and the sky outside was darker than motor oil. They were staring right at me. My heartbeat kicked up. I gripped my bag tighter and pushed through the automatic doors into the rain. Water soaked through my sneakers immediately, finding those holes I'd been ignoring. I didn't look back. I just walked faster, head down, shoulders hunched against the storm. Behind me, I heard a car door open, then close. "That's her," a voice said. Low. Certain. I didn't run. Running meant guilt, and I hadn't done anything wrong. But my hands were shaking when I finally reached my beat-up Honda, and it took 3 tries to get the key in the lock. What would you have done in that Walmart checkout line? Walked away or helped a stranger? The diner smelled like bacon grease and burned coffee when I showed up for my shift the next morning. Hawk's Nest wasn't much to look at. Cracked vinyl booths, a jukebox that only played country songs, and a cook named Big Jerome who cursed at the grill like it had personally wronged him. But it was mine. My corner of the world. The place where I knew every order before customers finished asking. "You look like death warmed over," LaToya said, tying her apron strings. She was the other waitress, 22 years old with 3 kids and enough attitude to fill the whole restaurant. "Rough night." Something like that, I said, pouring myself coffee that tasted like liquid tire rubber. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those two men in their perfect suits. That scar. Those sunglasses. The way they'd said, "That's her," like they'd been looking for me specifically. But that was crazy. I was nobody. A waitress who lived in a one-bedroom apartment with a roommate who worked nights at the hospital. Nobody noticed me. That was the whole point of how I'd built my life. The morning rush came and went. I smiled at truckers, refilled coffee for regulars, and pretended my feet didn't hurt. I was good at pretending. Foster care teaches you that early. How to make yourself small, how to blend in, how to survive by becoming invisible. Around 2 in the afternoon, the bell above the door chimed.
2 men walked in.
Black suits. One with a scar through his eyebrow. The other still wearing sunglasses. My coffee cup slipped from my fingers. It shattered against the floor, brown liquid spreading across worn linoleum like spilled secrets. LaToya grabbed a mop. "Girl, you okay?" I couldn't speak. Couldn't move. The men walked straight toward the counter where I stood frozen behind the register. The one with the scar smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Deandra Cole? My real name. My full name. The one I never used because it reminded me of caseworkers and court documents and all the ways I'd been shuffled from house to house like unwanted mail. "How do you?" He placed a small white envelope on the counter. You don't grow up in rough neighborhoods without learning to recognize power when it walks through a door. These weren't cops. They weren't bill collectors. They were something else entirely. Something that didn't take no for an answer. That night, my roommate Shanice sat on our thrift store couch and stared at me like I'd grown a second head. "You're not seriously thinking about going?" "She just wants to say thank you," I said, but even I didn't believe it.
Deandra.
Shanice only used my full name when she was scared for me.
Romano Estates?
That's where the Romano family lives. You know, the Romanos. As in the people who own half the city. As in the people the news won't even talk about because they're scared. She was just a sweet old lady who needed help with groceries. Sweet old ladies don't send men in $1,000 suits to track you down at work. Shanice grabbed my shoulders. "Promise me you won't go. Please." I looked down at the note again. That elegant handwriting. The way it said kindness is rare, like it was something precious and almost extinct. Nobody had ever called me kind before. Quiet, yes. Forgettable, sure. But kind? That felt like being seen for the first time in my life. "I'm going," I whispered. Shanice dropped her hands. "Then I'm coming with you."
No, Dee.
"If something goes wrong, I need you here. I need someone to know where I went." I tried to smile. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? She makes me eat fancy cookies and sends me home. Shanice didn't smile back. "The worst is that you don't come home at all." She wasn't wrong. But something in that note, something in the way those men had looked at me like I mattered, pulled at a part of me I'd tried to bury years ago. The part that still wanted to believe good things could happen to people like me. Sunday was 3 days away. 3 days to change my mind. 3 days to be smart. But I knew I wouldn't. I'd be there at 4 o'clock, standing at those iron gates, wondering if kindness really was rare enough to be worth this much trouble. What those men didn't tell me, what I wouldn't learn until it was too late, was that the woman I'd helped wasn't just anyone's grandmother. She was the mother of the most dangerous man on the East Coast. Sunday arrived like a storm I'd been watching form on the horizon. I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes trying to figure out what you wear to visit someone named Romano. Everything I owned looked cheap under the bedroom light. Faded jeans, thrift store blouses, a single black dress I'd bought for job interviews 5 years ago. I chose the dress. It had a small tear near the hem that I'd sewn up myself, but it was clean, respectable. The kind of thing that said, "I'm trying without screaming. I'm desperate." Shanice watched me from the doorway. "You don't have to do this." "I know. Then why are you?" I didn't have a good answer for that. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the $500 sitting in my purse that could cover rent and groceries for the next month. Maybe it was something deeper. A lifetime of being invisible finally interrupted by someone noticing I existed. "I'll text you every hour," I said. "If you don't hear from me by 6, call the police." "And tell them what?" "My roommate went to visit a crime family and didn't come back." Shanice shook her head. "The cops won't do anything. They're probably on the Romano payroll." She was probably right. But I grabbed my phone anyway, checked that it was fully charged, and headed for the door. The bus ride took 45 minutes. I watched the city change through the window, buildings getting newer, streets getting cleaner, people getting whiter. By the time I reached my stop, I was the only black woman in sight. Romano Estates sat at the end of a long private road. The gates were wrought iron, 12 feet tall, with a family crest I didn't recognize carved into the center. Cameras perched on the stone pillars like mechanical birds. A guard booth stood to the left, empty, but obviously monitored. I pressed the call button. My reflection in the camera lens looked small and afraid. "Name." A voice crackled through the speaker. "Deandra Cole." "I'm here to see Mrs. Romano." 3 seconds of silence. Then the gates swung open with a sound like a giant's exhale. The driveway curved through landscape gardens that probably cost more to maintain than my entire yearly salary. Rose bushes lined the path, red ones, white ones, yellow ones that seemed to glow in the afternoon sun. Fountains shot water into the air in perfect arcs. The grass looked like it had been cut with scissors, every blade exactly the same height. And then I saw the house. Calling it a house felt wrong. It was a mansion. 3 stories of white stone and tall windows, with columns like something out of a history book. Marble steps led up to double doors that could have fit a car through them. A man in a black suit, not one of the ones from the diner, waited at the entrance. "Miss Cole, Mrs. Romano is in the garden. Please follow me." He led me through a foyer with a chandelier that probably weighed more than my car, down a hallway lined with paintings of stern-looking white people, and out through French doors into a back garden that made the front look plain. And there she was. The old woman from Walmart sat in a white wicker chair surrounded by roses and cats. She wore a pale blue dress and pearls that caught the sunlight. When she saw me, her whole face brightened like someone had turned on a lamp behind her skin. "My dear girl," she said, standing up slowly. "You came." I didn't know what to do. Shake her hand? Hug her? Stand there awkwardly until someone told me what was appropriate? She made the choice for me, stepping forward and kissing both my cheeks like we were family. She smelled like lavender and something else, something expensive I couldn't name. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to another chair. "Would you like tea? Coffee? Anything at all?" "I'm fine," I said, my voice coming out too quiet. "Thank you." She studied my face the way artists study their subjects. Not judging, just seeing. Really seeing. "You're even prettier than I remembered. And so young. How old are you, dear?" 26. 26, she repeated, like the number meant something to her. "The same age my daughter was when—" She trailed off. Her eyes went somewhere far away for a moment, then came back to me. "I'm sorry," I said, though I didn't know what I was apologizing for. "Don't be." She reached across and took my hand. Her skin still felt paper-thin, delicate as moth wings. "You did something wonderful for me last week. Do you know what that cashier said after you left?" I shook my head. She said some people still have hearts. As if kindness was so rare it surprised her to see it. Elena's grip tightened slightly. That's what the world has become. We're so used to cruelty that basic human decency shocks us. A calico cat jumped onto my lap. I froze, not sure if I was allowed to pet it. "That's Sophia," Elena said, smiling. "She likes you. Animals always know." We talked for an hour. She asked about my life, where I grew up, what I did for work, what I wanted for the future. I told her the sanitized version. Foster care, but not the worst parts. The diner, but not how much my feet hurt. Dreams I'd stop having, because dreaming felt dangerous when you had to focus on surviving. She listened like my words were poetry, like I mattered. "You remind me so much of my daughter," she finally said.
Isabella.
She was kind like you. Gentle. She saw the good in everyone, even when there wasn't any good to see. I asked carefully. Cancer took her 8 years ago. Elena's voice didn't break, but something in it cracked around the edges. My son, he forgets what kindness looks like sometimes. Isabella was his conscience. Without her, he's become... A shadow fell across us. I looked up and forgot how to breathe. The man standing there was tall, 6'2", maybe 6'3", with shoulders that filled out his black suit like armor. His skin was olive-toned, his hair dark and swept back from a face that belonged on magazine covers or movie screens. Sharp jawline, full lips, eyes so dark they looked black from a distance. But it wasn't his looks that froze me. It was the way he carried himself. Like he owned not just this garden but the ground it sat on. Like gravity bent around him instead of the other way around. Power. That's what I felt rolling off him in waves. Pure, undeniable power. Luca, Elena said warmly. Come meet our guest. The man, Luca Romano, looked at me the way you'd look at a puzzle you couldn't quite solve. What would you do if the most dangerous man in the city suddenly wanted to know your name? Luca Romano didn't smile. He didn't frown either. His face stayed perfectly neutral as he studied me, taking in my thrift store dress, my nervous hands, the way I held my spine too straight like I was trying to prove I belonged there.
So, he said.
His voice was deep, smooth, with an edge to it like a knife wrapped in velvet. You're the girl who paid for my mother's groceries.
Girl.
Not woman. The word felt dismissive, like I was a child playing dress-up in adult spaces. I didn't know she was your mother, I said, meeting his eyes even though everything in me wanted to look away. I just saw someone who needed help. Interesting. He circled around to stand beside Elena's chair, one hand resting on the back of it. Protective. Possessive. People don't usually help strangers. Not without wanting something in return. Luca, Elena said softly. She's a guest. He ignored her. What do you want, Miss Cole? The question hit me like cold water. Nothing. Everyone wants something. He tilted his head slightly. Money? A job? Protection? I don't want anything from you, I said, and I could hear my voice getting smaller despite my best efforts. Your mother invited me here. I came to be polite. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or suspicion. He wasn't used to people telling him no, I realized. He was used to fear and respect and immediate obedience. Elena stood up, putting herself between us physically even though the threat wasn't violent. Deandra paid $97 for my groceries when my card wouldn't work. She didn't ask my name. She didn't take a picture for social media. She just helped because it was the right thing to do. Or because she recognized you, Luca countered. People stage these things all the time, Ma. Random acts of kindness that turn into leverage later. I didn't recognize her, I said, standing up too, because sitting made me feel like prey. I've never seen either of you before last Thursday. And I don't want leverage. I just wanted to make sure she got home with her groceries. Lucas stared at me for a long moment. The garden fell silent except for birds and the distant sound of water from the fountains. Even the cats seemed to sense the tension. Then he did something unexpected. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times, and turned it toward me. This is your bank account. You deposited my mother's $500. But you also paid your rent 3 days late and bought generic pasta on sale. My stomach dropped. How did you? I know everything about everyone who comes near my family. His voice stayed calm, factual, like he was discussing the weather. Your name is Deandra Cole. 26 years old. Born in Newark to a mother who died of an overdose when you were 3. Bounced through 7 foster homes before aging out at 18. You work at Hawk's Nest Diner, making minimum wage plus tips. You share a 1-bedroom apartment with Shanice Williams, a nursing assistant. You've never been arrested. Never been in debt. Never done anything interesting. Each fact felt like a punch. He'd looked into my life, turned it over like a rock to see what crawled underneath. Then you know I'm nobody, I said quietly. I'm not a threat. I'm just a waitress who helped an old lady. My mother, he corrected. Not an old lady. My mother. I didn't know that then. But you know it now. He put his phone away. Which means you understand the position you're in. My mother likes you. She wants to thank you. So I'll make sure you're taken care of. But if I find out you're playing some kind of game, if you're working for someone or trying to use this connection.
Luca, Elena snapped.
Enough. He looked at his mother, and something in his expression softened. Not much. Just a slight easing around the eyes. I'm protecting you. I don't need protection from a girl who bought me cat food. Elena turned to me. I apologize for my son. He's forgotten how to trust people. I haven't forgotten, Luca said. I've just learned better. Elena touched my arm gently. Would you join us for dinner next Sunday? I should have said no. Every instinct I had, every lesson learned from growing up in places where danger wore human faces, told me to thank her politely and run. But when I looked at Elena, I didn't see danger. I saw loneliness. The same kind I carried around inside my own chest like a stone I couldn't put down. I'd like that, I heard myself say. Luca's jaw tightened.
Ma.
It's settled then. Elena squeezed my hand. 7 o'clock. Casual dress. And please, bring your roommate if it makes you more comfortable. The man in the black suit appeared as if summoned. I'll walk you to the gate, Miss Cole. I followed him back through the mansion, past the paintings and the chandelier, and the life I could never afford. But I could feel Luca's eyes on me the whole way, measuring, calculating, trying to figure out what angle I was working. He'd never believe I didn't have one. People like him couldn't imagine that people like me just lived day by day, trying to survive with whatever scraps of kindness we could spare. As the gates closed behind me, I pulled out my phone to text Shanice. But there was already a message waiting. From a number I didn't recognize. You're braver than you look. Or more foolish. We'll see which.
Eller.
I stared at those words for 5 full minutes before I started walking toward the bus stop. Luca Romano had my number, which meant he could reach me anytime he wanted. The question was, what would happen when he did? 3 days passed. I went to work. I smiled at customers. I refilled coffee and brought out plates of eggs and tried to pretend my life was normal. But my phone stayed in my apron pocket like a bomb waiting to go off. Every time it buzzed, every text from Shanice, every spam call about my car's extended warranty, my heart jumped. Luca Romano didn't text again, which somehow felt worse than if he had. Wednesday night, I was closing up the diner. Big Jerome had already left through the back. LaToya was counting her tips at table 3. The only customers were a couple of truckers nursing their last cups of coffee before the overnight haul. Then the door burst open. 2 men in ski masks. One carrying a crowbar. The other with a gun that looked too big for his shaking hands. Everybody down.
Crowbar yelled. Cash. Now.
LaToya screamed and dropped under the table. The truckers hit the floor. I stood behind the register, frozen like a deer in headlights. The one with the gun pointed it at my face. Open it. My hands wouldn't work. Fear had turned my fingers into useless sticks. I said open it. He was young. I could tell by his voice. 18, maybe 19. Scared and desperate, and trying to sound tough. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I turned to the register, fumbling with the keys. My hands shook so hard I dropped them. They clattered to the floor. That's when I saw Kendrick. Our 16-year-old busboy, crouched behind the counter. He'd been cleaning back there when they came in. His eyes were wide with terror, and he was trying to make himself invisible. The men hadn't seen him yet. But if I opened that register, if I gave them what they wanted, they'd step around the counter. They'd find him. And I'd seen enough true crime shows to know what happened to witnesses. Lady, I'm not playing. Gun was getting louder. Angrier. I made a choice. I stepped sideways, putting myself between the register and the spot where Kendrick hid. The keys stuck. I lied. Just give me a second. Move. Gun shoved past me, and I did the stupidest thing I'd ever done. I grabbed his arm. He spun around and hit me with the gun. The metal connected with my cheekbone, and the world exploded into stars and pain, and the taste of copper flooding my mouth. I went down hard. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard shouting. Not from inside the diner, from outside. Tires screeched.
Car doors slammed.
And then the two men in ski masks were being dragged out by men in suits who moved like wolves. I tried to sit up, but my head spun. Blood dripped from my nose onto the checkered floor. Someone was talking to me, but their voice sounded underwater. Then a coat settled over my shoulders. Heavy. Expensive. Smelling like cologne and leather. You're safe now. I knew that voice. That impossible-to-forget voice. I looked up into Luca Romano's face. He was crouched beside me, his expression carved from stone except for his eyes. Those dark, dangerous eyes that held something I couldn't name. How did you? I started. I've had people watching you since Sunday, he said simply. When the alarm went off, they called me. You've been watching me? The words came out slurred. Everything hurt. Yes.
No apology.
No explanation beyond that single word. Paramedics rushed in. Lucas stepped back, but didn't leave. He stood there in his perfectly tailored suit while they checked my pupils and pressed ice to my face and asked me questions I barely registered. LaToya was crying. The truckers were giving statements to police who'd shown up impossibly fast. Kendrick was safe, hugging his knees, repeating she saved me over and over. And Luca Romano just watched. Silent.
Still.
Like a statue carved from violence and money. When the paramedics said I didn't need to go to the hospital, Luca spoke again. I'll take her home. I can. I tried to stand and immediately regretted it. His hand caught my elbow, steadying me with a grip that was somehow gentle and iron firm at the same time. You can barely walk. Don't be stubborn. The black SUV outside had leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Luca sat beside me in the back, while someone else drove.
He didn't speak.
Just stared out the window at the city passing by. Finally, I broke the silence. Why are you really watching me? Because people around my family end up dead, or used. He turned to look at me, and I haven't figured out which one you are yet. I'm neither. Maybe. His eyes dropped to the blood on my shirt. His coat had slipped off during the ambulance check. You protected that kid. You could have just given them the money and stayed safe. He's 16. So, the question wasn't cruel. Just genuinely curious. What's that got to do with you? Everything, I said. He's just a kid. I stopped myself. Expendable. Luca finished. Is that what you were going to say? I didn't answer.
Couldn't answer.
Because he was right. He leaned forward and spoke to the driver. Take us to Romano Estates.
What? No, y protested.
You're bleeding. You're in shock. And your roommate works nights, so there's nobody home to watch you. He said it like he was listing facts, not invading my privacy. My mother will want to see that you're okay, anyway. You'll stay the night. Guest room.
No arguments.
I should have argued anyway. Should have demanded he take me home. But my head hurt. My face throbbed. And the idea of being alone in that empty apartment suddenly felt unbearable. So, I just nodded and let him take me back to the mansion where this whole impossible thing had started. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that the moment I walked through those doors for the second time, I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. If you're still watching, comment below. Would you have given up the money or protected the kid? The guest room at Romano Estates had a bed bigger than my entire bedroom back home. White sheets. Down pillows that felt like sleeping on clouds. A bathroom with heated floors and a shower that had more buttons than my car dashboard. Elena insisted on checking my face herself. She sat me down at the vanity and dabbed at the cut with cotton soaked in something that stung but smelled like herbs. Her hands moved with practiced gentleness, like she'd done this before. Like she'd cleaned up after violence more times than she could count. You were very brave tonight, she said softly. I was stupid, I corrected. Brave people have plans. I just reacted. Sometimes that's the same thing. She pressed a butterfly bandage across my cheekbone. My daughter was like that. She'd throw herself in front of danger, without thinking. It's why she worked at that clinic in the bad part of town. Why she... Her voice broke. Just for a second. Then she collected herself like gathering up drop stitches. I'm sorry, I said. About your daughter. Elena's eyes met mine in the mirror. Isabella would have liked you. You have the same foolish heart. Luca appeared in the doorway. He'd changed out of his suit into dark jeans and a black t-shirt that made him look less like a crime boss and more like a regular person. Almost. Ma, let her rest, he said. I'm almost finished. Elena applied ointment to the swelling.
There.
You'll have a bruise, but nothing permanent. She kissed my forehead and left, closing the door behind her. Luca stayed, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. That boy you protected, he said. Kendrick Davis. 16 years old. Lives with his grandmother because his parents are in prison. Works after school to help pay rent. How do you know all that? I know everything that happens in my city. He pushed off the doorframe and walked closer. Not threatening, but not casual either. He's got 2 younger sisters. If those men had hurt him, if you hadn't stepped in, those girls would have ended up in the system. Just like you were. My throat tightened. Don't do that. Do what? Make it sound noble. I just didn't want a kid to get shot. Most people would have opened the register and looked away. He sat on the edge of the bed, keeping distance between us. You got hit in the face with a gun instead. That's not normal. Maybe I'm not normal. No, he agreed. You're not. We sat in silence for a moment. Outside the window, I could see the gardens lit up with soft lights. It looked like something from a fairy tale. The kind where the princess lives happily ever after. But I wasn't a princess. And this wasn't that kind of story. The men who tried to rob you, Lucas said carefully. They worked for someone. This wasn't random. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? I mean someone sent them to your diner specifically. Someone who knew you worked there. His voice stayed level, but his jaw was tight. They wanted to see how you'd react under pressure. They were testing you. Testing me for what? To see if you'd run to me for help. To see if you were using my mother to get close to my organization. He looked at me then, really looked at me. But you didn't call me. You didn't even think about it. You just try to protect a kid with your bare hands. Who sent them? I asked. Doesn't matter. They won't send anyone else. The way he said it made my blood run cold. Not because of what he meant, though that was bad enough, but because he said it like it was nothing. Like making people disappear was as casual as ordering coffee. You killed them, I whispered. I protected what's mine. He stood up.
Get some rest.
We'll talk more in the morning. I'm not yours to protect. He stopped at the door. Turned back. And for the first time, I saw something in his face that wasn't control or calculation. It was confusion. Like I'd said something in a language he didn't understand. You came to my mother's house, he said slowly. You accepted her invitation to dinner. You're sleeping under my roof right now. That makes you mine whether you like it or not. That's not how the world works. It's how my world works. He opened the door. Lock this behind me. Don't open it for anyone but my mother or me. Then he was gone, and I was alone in a room that cost more than I'd earn in 5 years, with a face that throbbed and a mind that wouldn't stop spinning. I locked the door like he'd told me. Then I sat on that impossible bed and tried to figure out how my life had gone from invisible to this in less than 2 weeks. The robbery kept playing in my mind. The fear in Kendrick's eyes. The weight of the gun. The moment I'd grabbed that man's arm, even though I knew it was stupid, knew it might get me killed. But what else was I supposed to do? Stand there and let a kid die because I was too scared to move? My phone buzzed. A text from Shanice. Where are you? I came home early, and you're not here. D, I'm freaking out. I called her. She picked up before the first ring finished. I'm fine, I said before she could start. There was an incident at the diner. I'm staying at a friend's place tonight. What friend? What incident? I couldn't tell her the truth.
Not all of it.
Just some trouble. The police handled it.
I'm okay. I promise.
You sound weird.
I'm tired.
I'll explain everything tomorrow. I hung up before she could ask more questions. Before I had to lie again. Sleep should have been impossible. But the adrenaline crash hit hard, and I was unconscious within minutes of my head touching those cloud pillows. I dreamed about foster homes, about caseworkers who looked through me instead of at me, about all the times I'd learned to make myself small and quiet and forgettable. But in the dream, Elena was there. She held my hand and said, "You don't have to disappear anymore." When I woke up, morning light was streaming through the windows, and I could smell coffee and something baking. For a moment, just one perfect moment, I forgot where I was, forgot everything that had happened. Then I touched my face and felt the swelling, felt the bandage Elena had placed so carefully. Reality came back like a slap. Someone knocked. "Miss Deandra? Mrs. Romano asked me to bring you breakfast." I opened the door. A woman in a neat uniform held a tray with eggs, toast, fresh fruit, and coffee in a real ceramic mug. Not the chipped ones from the diner. Not the plastic ones from my apartment. Real china. "Mrs. Romano is in the breakfast room when you're ready," the woman said. "Take your time." After she left, I ate mechanically. The food was amazing. The eggs perfectly cooked, the toast the right shade of golden, but I barely tasted it. What was I doing here? Playing house with people who made other people disappear? Pretending I belonged in a world where violence was just another Tuesday? But when I went downstairs and found Elena in the breakfast room surrounded by newspapers and cats, she smiled at me with such genuine warmth that my doubts quieted. "How did you sleep, dear?" "Better than I should have." She laughed. Guilt is a useless emotion before 10 in the morning.
Come sit.
"I want to hear about your week." So I told her. Not about the robbery she already knew, but about the regular things. The rude customer who left a quarter tip. The trucker who told the same joke every Wednesday. LaToya's youngest getting an award at school. Elena listened like these tiny details mattered. Like my small, invisible life was worth discussing over expensive coffee. "You care about people," she said finally. "That's rare in my world. Most people care about power or money or respect. But you just care. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?" "It's dangerous," she said honestly. "But it's also the most valuable thing a person can be." The door opened. Luca walked in, phone in hand, already dressed in another perfect suit. He looked at me, then at his mother, then back at me. "We need to talk," he said. "Alone." Elena's expression shifted. Not afraid. I don't think Elena Romano was afraid of anything but concerned. "Luca, what's wrong?" "Nothing Ma can't handle in the library while I speak with Miss Cole." It wasn't a request. Elena squeezed my hand once, then left us alone. Luca sat across from me, put his phone on the table face up. On the screen was a photo of me from last night, bloodied, being helped into his SUV. "This picture is on 3 gossip sites this morning," he said, with headlines asking who I'm protecting now. "By tomorrow, every reporter in the city will know your name. Every rival family will know you're under my roof. Every person I've ever had business with will think you matter to me." My mouth went dry.
Doi.
He didn't answer right away, just studied me with those impossible eyes. "I don't know yet, but they think you do, which means you're in danger whether I want you to be or not. Then I'll leave. I'll go home, stay away from your mother, pretend none of this happened." Too late for that. He turned the phone toward me. "Someone leaked this photo on purpose. Someone wants to make you a target, and the only way to keep you safe now is to make you too valuable to touch." "What does that mean?" Luca leaned back in his chair. "It means you're about to become a very important person, Deandra Cole, whether you're ready for it or not. If you've ever had your life flip upside down in a single moment, hit that like button because what happens next changed everything." 3 weeks passed like a fever dream. Elena insisted I stay at the estate until things calmed down, which apparently meant never. Shanice brought me clothes and asked 1,000 questions I couldn't answer. Big Jerome called to say my job was waiting whenever I was ready. LaToya sent text messages full of gossip about the mysterious woman connected to Luca Romano. But the truth was simpler and stranger than any rumor. I just spent time with an old woman who was lonely. We read together in the garden, played cards in the sunroom, Cooked meals that her staff insisted they could handle, but Elena refused to hand over. She taught me how to make her grandmother's sauce, the recipe she'd brought from Sicily as a girl. I taught her how to make my foster mother's cornbread, the one good thing I'd learned in that house before everything fell apart. Luca watched from a distance. Always there, but never close. He'd appear in doorways, at the edges of rooms, asking his mother if she needed anything. His eyes would flick to me for a half-second, measuring something I couldn't name, then he'd disappear back into whatever dark business kept him out until late hours. He doesn't trust easily, Elena said one afternoon while we shelled peas on the back porch. Isabella's death broke something in him. He thinks if he controls everything, he can prevent more loss. How did she die? I asked carefully. If you don't mind talking about it. Elena's hands stilled. A pea rolled off her lap and bounced down the steps.
Cancer. Pancreatic.
They found it too late. She was gone in 4 months. Her voice stayed steady, but her knuckles turned white around the bowl. She ran a clinic in the 9th ward. Free health care for people who couldn't afford it. She was there 6 days a week, even when the treatment made her so sick she could barely stand. She sounds amazing. She was stubborn.
Elena smiled sadly.
Just like you. Luca begged her to stop working, to rest, to let him pay for the best doctors anywhere in the world. But she said those people needed her more than she needed comfort. So she worked until the day she physically couldn't anymore. I tried to imagine loving someone that much. Watching them choose strangers over their own survival. That must have been hard for him. It destroyed him. Elena looked out at the gardens Isabella probably used to walk through. He'd built his whole empire to protect our family. And then he lost her anyway. Now, he thinks kindness is weakness. That caring makes you vulnerable. Do you think that? I think caring is the only thing that makes us human, she said quietly. Everything else is just survival. That night, Elena went to bed early. She tired easily, got winded climbing stairs, and I found myself wandering the mansion's library. Floor-to-ceiling books. A rolling ladder. Leather chairs that looked like they'd been there for 100 years. Luca was there, sitting in one of those chairs with a glass of something amber and a file folder open on his lap. Sorry, I said. I didn't know you were here. It's fine. He closed the folder. Can't sleep? Big beds make me nervous. Too much space. He almost smiled. Almost. Most people complain they're too small. I'm not most people. No, he agreed. You're really not. I should have left then. Should have said goodnight and gone back to that guest room with its impossible mattress. But something about the way he looked, tired around the eyes, shoulders less sharp than usual, made me stay. Can I ask you something? I said. You can ask. I might not answer. Why do you care so much what happens to me? Your mother's right. I'm nobody. Lucas set his glass down, looked at me for a long moment. 3 years ago, a man tried to kill my mother. Shot at her car when she was coming home from church. Do you know what happened? I shook my head. Her driver, a guy named Marcus who'd worked for my family for 20 years, threw himself in front of her. Took 3 bullets. Died in her arms before the ambulance arrived. His voice stayed flat, but his hands clenched. He had a wife. 2 daughters. A life that mattered. And he gave it up without thinking because he cared about my mother more than himself. That's terrible. It's loyalty, Luca corrected. It's the rarest thing in the world. And you have it. You threw yourself at a man with a gun to protect a kid you barely knew. You paid for my mother's groceries when you could barely afford your own. You don't have an angle. You don't want anything. You just care. That sounds like a criticism. It's an observation. He picked up his glass again, turned it in his hand so the light caught the liquid. People like you don't last long in my world. You burn out or get used up or die protecting someone who wouldn't do the same for you. Then why keep me around? Because my mother loves you. He said it simply, like it explained everything. And I'd burn this whole city down before I let her lose someone else she cares about. The weight of that statement hung in the air between us. Not romantic. Nothing about Luca Romano felt romantic. But heavy. Important. like a contract signed in blood instead of ink. I don't want to be a burden, I said. You're not. You're just. He trailed off, shook his head. Get some sleep, Deandra. Tomorrow's going to be complicated. He wasn't wrong. The next morning, Elena collapsed in the garden. One moment she was pruning roses, the next she was on the ground, clutching her chest, gasping for air that wouldn't come. I screamed for help. Staff came running. Luca appeared from nowhere, phone already at his ear calling for an ambulance. But I was the one who held Elena's hand while we waited. The one who told her to breathe, to stay with me, to hold on. Her skin had gone gray. Her lips were turning blue. She squeezed my fingers with surprising strength for someone who looked like she was dying. Promise me, she whispered.
Don't talk.
Save your strength. Promise me you'll use it to help women who think they're invisible. Use what? Elena, please. The foundation. My husband's name. It's yours now. Her eyes locked on mine. I already changed the papers. Luca knows. Promise me. I promise, I said, because what else could I say to a dying woman? I promise. The ambulance took her away. Luca rode with her, and I stood in that perfect garden surrounded by roses and cats, covered in Elena's blood, and tried to understand what had just happened.
She'd given me something.
Something important. Something that would change everything. And I didn't even know what it was yet. Elena Romano died at 3:17 in the morning. Heart failure. Complications from a condition she'd apparently been hiding for months. The doctors said she'd known. She'd refused treatment because she wanted to live her last days on her own terms instead of in a hospital bed. Stubborn. Just like her daughter. Just like me. The funeral was 2 days later. I stood in the back of the cathedral, a building so big my entire apartment complex could have fit inside, and watched hundreds of people file past her casket. Politicians, business owners, people in suits that cost more than cars. All of them paying respects to a woman they probably barely knew. But when it was my turn to say goodbye, I was alone at the casket except for Lucas standing silent as a statue beside me. I looked down at Elena. They dressed her in blue, her favorite color. Her hands were folded over her chest. She looked peaceful, like she was just sleeping. She loved you, Lucas said quietly. I loved her too. I know. He touched the casket once, his fingers gentle against the polished wood. She saw something in you. Something I didn't understand at first. But she was always smarter than me about people. After the funeral, everyone gathered at Romano Estates. There was food and wine and quiet conversations about memories and legacy. I stayed in the corner, out of place in my single black dress among people dripping with diamonds and designer labels.
That's when the lawyer found me.
Miss Deandra Cole? I nodded. I'm Robert Chen, Mrs. Romano's attorney. She left specific instructions that you be present for the reading of her will. Would you come with me, please? The library. The same one where I'd talked with Luca. But now it was full of people, Luca's business associates, distant relatives, board members of companies I'd never heard of. Mr. Chen opened a file folder. Mrs. Elena Romano's last will and testament, updated 3 days before her death. 3 days. That's how long she'd been planning this. The reading went on forever. Properties divided up. Stocks distributed. Money allocated to charities and staff members. I tried to tune it out, to disappear like I was good at doing. Then I heard my name. To Deandra Cole, I leave full control and management of the Romano Foundation, a private trust established in my late husband's name, currently valued at $43 million. Additionally, Miss Cole will receive a permanent seat on the Romano Holdings Board of Directors, with all voting rights and privileges. The room exploded. People stood up, shouting. A woman in pearls called it outrageous. A man in an expensive suit demanded the will be challenged. Someone yelled about me being a nobody, a stranger, a gold digger who'd manipulated a sick old woman. I couldn't breathe. $43 million. A board seat. Control over a foundation I'd never heard of. It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. Mr. Chen raised his voice. The will is legally binding and beyond challenge. Mrs. Romano was of sound mind when she made these changes. She also left a letter to be read to Miss Cole in private. Luca hadn't moved, hadn't spoken. He just sat in his chair watching me with an expression I couldn't read. When the room finally cleared, people storming out, muttering about lawyers and investigations, Mr. Chin handed me an envelope. She wanted you to read this alone, he said.
Luca stood.
I'll give you privacy. No, I said quickly.
Stay.
Please. He hesitated, then nodded and sat back down. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a single page in Elena's elegant handwriting. My dearest Deandra, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I had time to say goodbye, but if I didn't, please know that these last weeks with you were the happiest I've had since Isabella died. You reminded me what it means to be human instead of just surviving. The foundation was my husband's dream, to help women escape abuse, find education, build lives worth living. After he died, I kept it running, but it became just another task. Just another obligation. Then I met you, and I remembered why it mattered. I'm giving you this foundation because I trust hearts more than blood. My son has built an empire from shadows, but you carry light. Use it. Help women who think they're invisible. Show them they matter. And forgive Luca if he fights you on this. He protects what he loves by building walls. But you're the kind of person who opens doors instead. With all my love, Elena. I read it twice. 3 times. Trying to absorb words that didn't make sense. She really did this, I whispered. She really gave me everything. Not everything, Luca said. Just the foundation. The part that mattered to her most. I can't accept this. I don't know how to manage millions of dollars. I'm a waitress. You're a woman who paid $97 for a stranger's groceries, he corrected. That's exactly who should be running that foundation. Your associates think I stole it from her. My associates think money is the only thing worth having. They don't understand loyalty or kindness or any of the things my mother valued. He stood up and walked to the window. You want to honor her memory? Use that money the way she wanted. Help people who need it. Prove them all wrong. What if I mess it up? Then you mess it up. He turned back to face me. But I don't think you will. And neither did she. In that moment, standing in a library in a mansion I didn't belong in, holding a letter from a dead woman who changed my life, I made a decision. I'd do it. I'd run that foundation. I'd help women who felt invisible because I knew exactly what that felt like. And maybe, just maybe, I'd prove that kindness wasn't weakness after all. Comment below, would you have accepted a gift this big or walked away? The Romano Foundation offices sat in downtown Manhattan on the 18th floor of a building made of glass and steel. My first day there, I wore a suit Luca's assistant had bought for me. Black, professional, more expensive than anything I'd owned in my life. The staff stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Some with curiosity, some with anger. One woman, the previous director who'd been demoted to assistant director, looked at me with pure hatred. Her name was Victoria Chen, 50-something. Sharp features and sharper words. So you're the waitress who inherited my job, she said. I'm learning, I replied. I hope you'll help me. She smiled without warmth. Of course. The foundation funded women's shelters, job training programs, and education scholarships. On paper, it looked perfect, but the more I dug into the files, the more things didn't add up. Money going to organizations that didn't exist. Invoices from companies with no websites. Checks signed by Elena, but dated after she'd stopped coming to the office. Someone had been stealing, and they'd been good at hiding it. I worked late every night, tracking every dollar, following every trail. Luca had assigned 2 security guards to watch over me, men in suits who stood outside my office and escorted me home. They made me feel safer and more trapped at the same time. 3 weeks in, I found it. A shell company receiving $200,000 a month for consulting services that didn't exist. The company was registered to Victoria Chen's brother. They'd been stealing from Elena, from the women who needed help, from the foundation Isabella had loved. I should have gone to Luca. Should have let him handle it the way he handled everything, with violence and finality. But that wasn't who I was. That wasn't what Elena had wanted. So I gathered every piece of evidence, printed it out, put it in a folder, and called Victoria into my office. She walked in confident, sat down like she owned the place. I slid the folder across the desk. "What's this?" she asked. "Proof that you've been embezzling foundation money for 18 months. 200,000 a month. 3.6 million total." Her face went white, then red, then cold as ice. "You can't prove that." "I can. Bank records. Shell company registration. Invoices that don't match actual work performed. Email chains between you and your brother discussing how to hide the payments." I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was racing. This isn't what Elena wanted. This foundation was supposed to help women escape abuse. You stole from them.
Victoria laughed.
Actually laughed. You think anyone cares? You think your little paper trail matters? Do you know who I am? Who my family is connected to? "I don't care who you are," I said quietly. "I care what you did." "Then fire me. Go ahead. I'll sue you for everything. I'll make your life a nightmare. And I'll win because I have lawyers and connections, and you have nothing." "I have evidence," I corrected. "And I have a choice to give you." That stopped her. "What choice?" "You resign."
Today.
Quietly. "You pay back every dollar you stole over the next 5 years through a payment plan we'll set up. And I won't press charges or tell anyone what you did. And if I don't, then I take this to Luca Romano." I leaned forward. "And we both know what he does to people who steal from his family." The color drained from her face again. She understood.
Luca wouldn't sue.
He wouldn't go through courts and lawyers and legal battles. He'd just make her disappear. "You'd do that," she whispered. "You'd sick him on me?" "No," I said honestly. "I'd prefer you just resign. But I will protect this foundation. I will protect Elena's legacy. And if you force me to choose between your life and the women who need this help, I'll choose them every time." Victoria stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up, grabbed her purse, and walked out without another word. Her resignation letter was on my desk within an hour. That night, Luca showed up at my office unannounced. He leaned against the doorframe, watching me pack up files. "I heard Victoria quit today," he said. "She did. Want to tell me why?" "Personal reasons." I kept my eyes on my briefcase. "Nothing important." "Deandra." He walked into the office and closed the door. "I have people watching you. I know she was stealing. I know you confronted her. I know you gave her a choice instead of calling me. She's paying it back. That's what matters. What matters is that she stole from my mother." His voice went hard. "People who do that don't get choices." "Your mother believed in redemption," I said, finally looking at him. "She believed people could change. And that's what I'm going to believe too, because this is her foundation. Not yours. Not mine. Hers." We stood there in silence. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched. I'd just challenged him, defied him, told him his way wasn't the only way. He could have fired me, could have taken the foundation back, could have made me disappear like he did to everyone else who crossed him. Instead, he did something I didn't expect. He smiled. Not the cold, calculated smile he used in business. A real one. Small but genuine. "You're right," he said quietly. "This is her foundation. And you're exactly who she wanted running it." Then he left, and I sat alone in my office trying to understand what had just happened. I'd stood up to Luca Romano, and he'd respected me for it. Maybe Elena was right. Maybe kindness wasn't weakness. Maybe it was power in a form most people couldn't recognize. Over the next 6 months, the foundation transformed. We funded 12 new shelters, launched 3 job training programs, gave scholarships to women who'd given up on education because they couldn't afford it. Every time we opened a new center, I thought about Elena, about the woman who'd seen potential in a waitress who'd paid for her groceries, about how a single act of kindness could ripple out in ways we never imagined. And sometimes, late at night when I couldn't sleep, I'd wonder what she'd think of what I'd become. If she'd be proud of the scared girl who'd learned to use her voice, who'd learned that quiet strength could move mountains if you just knew where to push. If you believe in second chances, drop a comment below, because this story's not over yet. The blood on my hands wasn't mine this time. I stood in the bathroom of Romano Estates, scrubbing at skin that wouldn't come clean even though the water ran clear. My reflection looked back at me, same face, different person. The scared waitress who'd paid for groceries was gone. In her place stood someone harder. Someone who'd learned that protecting what you love sometimes means crossing lines you swore you'd never touch. 20 minutes earlier, I'd killed a man. Not directly. Not with my own hands holding the weapon. But I'd made the call that ended his life, and that was close enough to feel the weight of it settling into my bones like concrete. His name was Marcus Webb. He'd been skimming money from the foundation, smaller amounts than Victoria, smarter about hiding it. But he'd also been selling information about our shelter locations to abusive partners looking for their wives. 3 women were dead because of him. 3 women who'd trusted us to keep them safe. When I discovered the truth, I'd sat in my office for an hour staring at the evidence. The part of me that was still Deandra, still the girl who believed everyone deserved second chances, wanted to give him the same deal I'd given Victoria. Resign.
Pay it back.
Disappear quietly. But the part of me that had become something else, the part that had spent 2 years learning how Luca's world actually worked, knew that wasn't enough. Not this time. Not when bodies were involved. So I'd called Luca, showed him the files, and I'd said 5 words that changed everything. Handle this however you want. He'd studied my face for a long time. You understand what you're asking me to do? Yes. There's no coming back from this. Once you cross this line. I know. And I did. I knew exactly what I was becoming. What Elena's gift had turned me into. He killed 3 women. He would have killed more. Someone has to stop him. Luca had nodded once. Made a phone call. And Marcus Webb ceased to exist. Now I stood in this bathroom trying to wash away guilt that wouldn't rinse off, and I wondered what Elena would think. If she'd be proud I was protecting vulnerable women, or horrified that I'd become the kind of person who could order someone's death without my hands shaking. A knock on the door. Dee? You in there? Shanice. She'd been working as the Foundation's community outreach director for 6 months now. She knew some of what I did. Not all of it. Never all of it.
Yeah.
Just a minute. I dried my hands, fixed my hair, put on the mask I'd gotten good at wearing, the one that said everything was fine even when it wasn't. When I opened the door, Shanice took one look at my face and knew. What happened? Marcus won't be a problem anymore. Her eyes widened.
Dee.
Tell me you didn't. I protected our clients. That's my job. I walked past her toward the stairs. The memorial for the 3 women is tomorrow at noon. Make sure we send flowers. Big arrangements. The expensive kind. Deandra. She grabbed my arm. This isn't you. You're not. Not what? I turned to face her. Not someone who does what needs to be done. Not someone who protects the people who can't protect themselves. My voice came out harder than I meant it to. 3 women are dead because I didn't act fast enough. I won't make that mistake again. At what cost? Shanice whispered. You're turning into them. The people Elena saved you from. Elena gave me power. I corrected. What I do with it is my choice. I left her standing in the hallway and went to find Luca. He was in his office, the one he used for business that couldn't be conducted in boardrooms. The walls were soundproof. The windows bulletproof. Everything in that room existed in shadows. It's done, he said before I could speak.
Clean.
No traces. No problems.
Good.
He poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Handed me one. You holding up okay? I will be. I drank it in one swallow. It burned going down, but I welcomed the pain. Physical discomfort I could handle. It was the emotional weight that threatened to crush me. My mother would hate what we just did, Luca said quietly. I know, but she'd understand why we did it. He refilled my glass. That's the thing about kindness. Real kindness. It's not about being soft. It's about protecting the people who matter, even when it costs you pieces of your soul. How many pieces do you have left?
I asked.
He smiled, that dangerous smile that made him look more predator than man. Enough to keep going. That's all that matters. We stood there in comfortable silence. Two people who'd been changed by the same woman for different reasons. Two people who'd learned that good intentions sometimes require dark actions. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Saw what you did to Marcus. Impressive. We should talk.
Then,
I showed it to Luca. His expression went cold. Dante Morrison. He runs the South Side territory. If he's reaching out, then he wants something. Or he sees you as a threat. Luca took my phone and forwarded the message to himself. I'll handle this.
no.
I pulled the phone back. If he wants to talk to me, we'll talk. But on my terms. My territory. Deandra. I'm not a child who needs protecting anymore, Luca. I'm the woman running a $43 million foundation who just ordered a man's death. Dante Morrison wants to see if I'm weak. I'm going to show him I'm not. For the first time since I'd met him, Luca looked at me with something like respect. You've changed. Elena's gift came with responsibilities. I'm just learning what they cost. I typed a response to Dante. Romano Foundation offices.
Tomorrow.
Noon. Come alone. His reply came instantly. Brave. Or stupid. I'll be there. I looked at Luca. I need you to trust me on this.
Ido.
But I'm still putting armed guards in the building. He set his glass down. And if he tries anything,
He won't.
men like Dante respect power. I just have to show him I have it. The next day, I wore red. Elena had once told me red was the color of power, that it made people pay attention whether they wanted to or not. The dress was simple but elegant. Professional but commanding. The kind of thing that said I belonged in rooms where decisions got made. Dante Morrison arrived exactly at noon. He was younger than I expected, maybe 35, with smooth dark skin and eyes that calculated everything. Two men flanked him despite my instructions to come alone. Miss Cole. He extended his hand. I shook it firmly. Thank you for agreeing to meet. You requested the meeting. I assumed you had something important to say. We sat in my office. His men stayed by the door. Luca's guards stayed in the hallway. Everyone was armed. Everyone was ready. I'll be direct, Dante said. Marcus Webb worked for me. You had him killed. My heart jumped, but I kept my face neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. He smiled without warmth. We both know better. Webb was my inside man. He fed me information about your operations. And when you discovered him, you called Luca Romano and had him eliminated. If that's true, then you're admitting you had someone sabotaging a women's shelter foundation. That you're partially responsible for 3 deaths. I'm admitting I had business interests that conflicted with yours. He leaned forward. But here's the thing, I'm not angry.
I'm impressed.
Most people in your position would have handled it through lawyers or police. You went straight to the source. That takes courage. Or insanity. I haven't decided which. What do you want, Morrison? I want to know if we're going to war. Because if we are, I need to prepare. And if we're not, I'd like to discuss how we can avoid future conflicts. I thought about Elena, about what she would do. Then I thought about what I'd become. And I realized they weren't the same person anymore. We're not going to war, I said carefully. But if you come after my foundation again, if you put any more women at risk, I won't call lawyers or police. I'll call Luca, and you'll disappear. Are we clear? Dante studied me for a long moment. Then he laughed, a real laugh that actually reached his eyes. Crystal clear. I like you, Miss Cole. You're direct.
Honest.
I can work with that. He stood up, extended his hand again. This time when I shook it, it felt like sealing a deal instead of a threat. One more thing, he said at the door. Elena Romano was a good woman. What you're doing with her foundation, really helping people instead of just moving money around, that matters.
Don't lose sight of that.
Don't become so hard that you forget why you started. Then he was gone, And I was alone with the weight of what I'd almost done, what I might still have to do, what I'd become in the name of protecting people who needed help. Shanice appeared in the doorway. You okay?
No.
But I will be. I looked at the photo of Elena I kept on my desk, the one from the garden, surrounded by cats and roses. I have to be. That night, I went back to my apartment for the first time in weeks. Not the guest room at Romano Estates. My actual apartment with a thrift store couch and the broken blinds and the life I used to have. It felt like visiting a museum, like looking at artifacts from someone else's existence. I sat on that couch and tried to remember who I'd been 2 years ago. The scared waitress who couldn't afford work shoes. The invisible girl who'd learned to survive by staying quiet. She was gone. Maybe forever. In her place was someone harder. Someone who made impossible choices. Someone who carried the weight of other people's lives on her shoulders and didn't know how to put it down.
My phone rang.
Unknown number. Hello. Miss Cole. This is Detective Raymond Harris. I need to ask you some questions about Marcus Webb's disappearance. My blood went cold. I don't know anyone by that name. That's interesting, because security footage shows him entering the Romano Foundation offices the day before he vanished. And phone records show you called Luca Romano immediately after. I call Luca about many things. He's my business partner. Is he? Not a question. An accusation. Listen carefully, Miss Cole. I know what you are. I know what you've become. And I'm going to prove it. When I do, not even Luca Romano will be able to protect you. The line went dead. I sat there in the dark, holding a phone that felt like a ticking bomb, and realized the walls I'd built around myself were starting to crack. Someone was watching. Someone knew. And eventually, someone would have enough evidence to bring it all crashing down. The question was, would I be ready when they did? If you've made it this far, you know this story doesn't have easy answers. Would you have made the same choices? Would you have protected those women no matter the cost? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one, and your perspective might just change how someone else sees the world. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because this channel is just getting started, and trust me, you don't want to miss what comes next. We've got more stories about real people making impossible choices, about power and sacrifice, and the price of doing what's right when right isn't simple. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's fighting their own battles and wondering if kindness still matters in a world that feels too dark. Because here's the truth. It does matter. It always has. Sometimes we just have to become strong enough to protect it. The next story drops next week, and it's going to challenge everything you think you know about loyalty and family and the lines we cross when we love someone. Don't miss it. This community we're building, it's special. It's real people having real conversations about hard topics. So drop a comment, hit that like button, and let's keep this conversation going. Because stories like these, they don't just entertain. They change us. And maybe that's exactly what we need.